Hello, hello, you brilliant people. This is Zakia Larry. I know today looks a little bit different. You may be used to seeing us on camera, but welcome to our virtual world. And we will be making sure we have camera up and ready and rolling for you guys with our very next interview. But today, we want you to zone in, listen up, because I have a very special person and a very special treat for you today. Now, our topic today is technology and marketing innovations in the age of pivots. Oh my goodness, this is a doozy, right? And so let me tell you who's joining us, Shama Hyder. Oh my goodness. And before I tell you a little bit about her, you guys know that nothing is business as usual anymore. The savvy professionals are open to adopting an unusual approach to running and growing their business. And you know what? They know that marketing is key. So joining us today is Shama Hyder, Chief Executive Officer of Zen Media, a global marketing and new media firm. And hey, this is a two-part series. This is how rich in information Shama is and has for us. And her insight as a visionary business strategist for the digital age will help you to get the most out of your digital sales approaches, identify the most effective platforms, and learn to connect digitally. And just before I get into my first question for Shama, I want you to know that you can ask questions too. Yes, please drop those questions in your chat box as she and I flow along today. And I just want to let you know this woman is incredible. She's a best-selling author of The Zen of Social Media Marketing, now in its fourth edition, and Momentum, How to Propel Your Marketing and Transform Your Brand in the Digital Age. She's delivered keynotes in over 20 countries and spoken for recognized brands, including Movado, Chase, Tupperware, and Inc. 5000. Her awards list is through the roof, and as a CEO, she helps her team and both B2B and B2C brands make meaningful connections with modern day customers via influence marketing, experiential, and digital storytelling. Welcome, 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 Shama. How are you?
Thank you, Zakia. So excited to be here. So excited to be chatting with you and meeting all our audience remotely. And like you said, hopefully next time we'll have video and all. But I really am thrilled to be here. It really is a very exciting time in many ways.
It is. And you just teased something phenomenal next time. So, what Shima is just revealing for you guys, and thank you for this treat, this is a two-part series because we understand how important marketing is. And so, here's what we're going to do today. Shima has agreed to talk to us today about marketing in terms of strategy. Today, we're digging into best practices, pivots, expected results. And then our second part on October 27th, we get into the tactics. What about the technology, the trending platforms? How can you be more comfortable doing business remotely, particularly in this industry? So those are the two parts. And yes, absolutely, video next time. And it is an incredible, incredible season. So you know what, Shima, let's do this. I would like to pull the slingshot back so that we can launch it forward. A lot
Okay.
of folks use marketing, they throw the term around. Let's level set a little bit. How do you actually define marketing? Because there might be some misgivings about what it can or can't accomplish. So let's fully understand what it is right now so that we can dig in.
Yeah, such a great question, Zakia. And I'll do you one better. I'll define social media and marketing, okay? Because I think
Mm,
you think marketing has mixed messages, then social media
Mhm.
really does, right? Throws people for a loop every single time. So when you look at marketing, really it is one of the oldest professions in the world, right? It started by if you're a history buff, they've excavated the city of Pompeii that was buried, and you see that under like all the ash and everything on the walls of the city of Pompeii, they find messages that say, my fish is fresher than this guy's fish. So
Wow.
that's yeah. So marketing is in terms of getting your message out there, connecting with your audience, and at the end of the day, all good marketing is meant to drive sales, right? Connecting the right people with the right products, right services, all these good things. And so, I think that's something that most of us have a good grasp on. Like, we need to be able to get our message out there. Social media now throws a lot of folks, and I just want to do that definition if it's
Oh,
okay with
yes.
you, because I
Oh,
know
yes.
we're going to use the term so much and the phrase, and really this is how I want people to start even thinking about it. So if you're on this, if you're listening right now, you might think of social media and you might think about websites or networks where people connect with each other and they communicate, and they're collaborating. Like, you might think of LinkedIn or Facebook or TikTok, even Instagram. These are all social platforms, and that's wonderful. But really, the phrase social media, and I've said this for a while, means people are now the media. And that ties into your questions, Aki, about
Mhm.
what is marketing. And so it's marketing is always about how do you connect with the people to get your message across, and understanding that social media is people are the media, right? How messages spread, how information spreads, that in itself is extremely powerful. And then you look at, in other words, when we use social media, or especially when I use the term, it's simply shorthand for the state of the internet. So when you first started,
Mhm.
social media meant like getting on Twitter, maybe, or it meant, understanding this
Right.
little nuanced land. Today, social media may mean something very different. And so the platforms will come and go, but this idea of social media marketing or marketing in the digital age is how do you connect with people in the way that they want to be connected to, and what's the preference, right? And today, especially with
Mhm.
where we are, it's not just a preference, it's the new normal, it's the new requirement.
Right.
I think these are sort of the definitions that I hope everyone on the call are really listening in, sort of adjust their lens to be able to look at these definitions, and use these definitions for what we're talking about, rather than specific platforms or anything else.
That's really interesting rather than specific platforms. So let's dig in. Let's continue that sort of thread. Shema, what would you say are the top two common marketing mistakes that you see financial services professionals make? And let's one up it, particularly when business is down. Are there two common mistakes?
So it's funny because, as a kid, it's a great question. And here's the thing, the mistakes are mistakes in good times and bad times, right? And I say bad
Mm,
times, I use that term loosely, challenging times, which I think we can all agree these are challenging times and that they're different. It's not what we're used to. So the mistakes are the same. The stakes are higher when things are more challenging because they cost you more, right?
yes.
So if you look at financial services really across the board, what are two mistakes people make when it comes to their marketing? One is not staying consistent. This is really, really important. Um,
Ah,
right. So it's like, yeah, I sent out that newsletter once.
right.
Okay. Um, I touched base with my clients for referral that one time. Or, yeah, and this is so common. My marketing is a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's just a lack of consistency. And I think that's the number one mistake financial service professionals make, and really business, any professionals um, in the professional services space and across the board. I mean, the inconsistency is a mistake you see made often. The other mistake is, mistaking the medium for the message, meaning you're not really thinking
Mm,
about strategically what's going to be helpful for your audience. So it becomes, really good marketing goes beyond just, problem solution, right? it looks at that bigger picture of what would help your audience right now, what would help your customers, what would help your prospects. So these two mistakes are made in great times and challenging ones. But what happens is in
Mhm.
challenging times, when there's so much more noise and there's so much more chaos, the price you pay for these mistakes becomes higher, right? So
Right.
before, where even a little bit of marketing here and there might get you results, what you find now is, whoa, that lack of consistency is really coming to bite me, right? It's
Right.
not
Right.
having that. So the cost for those mistakes goes up. And so I think it's very important both to have that strategic kind of session, even with yourself, to say, what's my audience really hungry for right now? How can I serve my community, my network? And then, how can I be consistent in doing that? Um, and one of the other C's that I love, it's not really a mistake, but I think it's a best practice, is to try to be compact. So see, even with this, when you and I first spoke, and we were talking about how much content we have to cover and how much we want, to address what's happening right now and give people real meaty stuff that they can be able to go home or work from home and be able to work with. We
Right.
broke it into 2 sessions. I mean, that's a very strategic move. We did it because right now, when the noise is so high, compact messages, consistently do better than even sort of long, drawn out, like 60-minute keynotes and so forth. So you have
Right.
to change that a little bit to meet people kind of where they are right now.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. I hope you guys are writing notes. And you know what? If you haven't written notes down, no worries. You get the whole kit and caboodle. Here's what I mean. And Shima, please give me a second to just plug you because you're so brilliant.
Oh,
Everyone today, you get your own free copy of her book, Momentum. Seriously. So everything she's talking about, please make sure you're making notes and then please go deeper. In order to get her book, make sure you go to Council for Inclusion /fin finserve dash now. And I'll repeat that at the end and we'll also pop it in the chat box. So just go right back to the web page where you signed up and fill out the form to get your book. So I just wanted people to know that as they're digesting this, Shima, they actually get a chance to really learn along with you here. So you talked about some best practices. I love, love, love your thoughts on strategy. And I do understand that strategies are custom, but can you give us some tips on how one can define a sound strategic marketing plan? What are some of those anchors that make it a sound strategic marketing plan?
yeah, great question, Zakia. So before I even answer that, and I promise I will answer that, I just want to help people understand on here. I want to share some of my key findings that I discovered during my research. Okay, so some of you may not know this on the call, but I did my thesis on Twitter when it had 2,000 users. So
Wow.
extremely early days of social media. People say, "What's that Twitter bird? Which cartoon is that?" And one of the fascinating things that I learned at that time was I was looking at why people use social media. And again, this is platform agnostic. And I thought, it's to connect with other people, it's to have that sense of community. But I was wrong. That's the secondary reason that people actually use social media. And I'll tell you why this is important in just a second. The primary reason people use platforms and social platforms is to showcase their own identity. Okay. Now, it
Wow.
may sound a little narcissistic right off the bat, but the truth is that, how we grow as human beings, as professionals, as just people, is by getting feedback from the world, right? So it's like, I like this. That's how we make our first friend. And even in school, they reflect back to us our choices and likes and so forth. And so all of that to say, when we do brand building exercises, or when you think about, to your question, what what should my social media marketing, like, what should my strategy even look like, right? Where do I even start when it
Sure.
comes to marketing? You have to start, and the question every brand asks themselves inevitably is, what does our brand stand for? What do I want to stand for? What does the company stand for? What does the organization stand for? So forth. But really, what this research reveals, and the question that should be asked is, what does doing business with me allow my customers to say about themselves? All right. I'll just repeat that because I think it's so important. What does doing business with me or us allow our customers or prospects to say about themselves? So when we work with a certain brand, or when we choose to work with a certain real estate professional, or when we have a certain, individual that we choose to work with or engage with for whatever reason, it's less about them and much more what it lets us say about ourselves, right? Um, Even from the perspective of, like, how much expertise someone may have, or what I find fascinating was, for years and years, the real estate industry, people were very scared that they would need agents because technology would essentially unearth that whole thing. Like, you don't need an agent. And the funny thing is, today we're at a point where you don't technically need anyone, right? To even, like, buy, sell home, for example, the whole process can be
Mhm.
done through technology. Yet, over 90% of the people still prefer to work with an agent. So when you think about it in those terms, you have to think about, like, why? What is Because there's a certain comfort
Right.
in that, right? Just as, like, the more noise that increases, the more we hunger, not just for the creators of content, but curators. So I can talk about the 3 C's too, by the way, the different ways to kind of build your strategy, and kind of, what personality are you,
Yes,
so to
yes.
speak. But I think so. You start there, right? Is you think about your audience and you think about the bigger picture of what they need, not what do you offer, but what's the bigger, like, what's the bigger thing they're trying to accomplish. And I'll give you an example. So Chase Business is a client of ours, and one of the things that was so fascinating is the things that we worked with Chase on. In part of this is, how do they serve their customers. It's not about banking. It's rarely about banking. They understand the bigger picture is, their business customers are trying to grow what? Their business, right? So they try to be that
Mm.
resource as much as possible for their customers. And that's how you build loyalty. That's a great strategy, because now it's not about, hey, where do you bank? What are your finance? Like, it's the bigger picture. It's the, hey, what are you trying to accomplish, and how can I help you do that? So there's 3 C's, and these are just, you can jot these down and think about which one you are. And Zakia, I'll take a guess as to what you are, okay? I
Oh, I'm excited. Okay.
there's there's the creator, and creators are people who can come up with great content all the time, and I think it's a wonderful trait. Creators are the one that have ideas. They're creating. They're the ones that can do an Insta post every single day. They can come up with LinkedIn updates. They're just by nature creators. The second one is a curator. They are people who bring resources together that their audience needs. So this would be someone who would start a podcast, or is it kind of what you're doing now, like with FinServe, you're curating expertise for your members. So very much in line, like, it's a little bit meta, but if you're listening, you can do the same thing. You can look at, hey, how can I apply this to what I need? How can I take this and say, you don't have to always come up with the ideas. How can you curate what, one of my colleagues in my network in LinkedIn right now has been highlighting um, Black executives and Black company owners who, every week on his profile, he picks one executive, one leader who's outstanding, who happens to be Black, and he highlights them. And I think it's such a cool thing, right? It's curation at its best. It's bringing forth people into the spotlight who otherwise may not have the spotlight. It's giving people that platform. And then the third C is connector. It's where,
Mm.
and this I think could work for a lot of folks on here at the financial services industry and in real estate, is that you're connecting people to the resources that they need. It doesn't mean that you're curating on kind of a mass scale, but you're kind of like the go-to, right? Where let's say that you're doing a real estate transaction, but like the best title company, the best stager, the best, whatever it is, like, you have relationships with all the banks, you have relationships with, like, everything your potential client would need, you have, right? You have access to, or you have the ability to bring forth, and you are always making those connections. So you have a creator mentality, you can be a curator, you can be a connector. And Zakia, something tells me you're a little bit of all three. So tell me if I'm wrong, but
You you 100% have me identified.
um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so and that's the thing. You don't have to pick one. You can definitely be a combination, but these are good ways to start thinking about who's your audience and then strategically which one fits your style best or where you feel. And sometimes when you're not ready to create, curating is a great thing. Even when people say, I've never been on Twitter, I want to get, started on it or whatnot, I say, listen, you can choose, if all you did is retweet people that you really respected, that you could have a great channel. Or if you host
Mm.
your own tweet chat, as I know some of my colleagues do. There's so many ways to provide value to your audience, and they don't always have to include creating things.
That is so interesting. This is incredibly helpful. And remember, guys, we get into a part two. We get into tactics, the technology, what to use. So please stay tuned for that. So, Shima, we have about 3 minutes left. And I just want to ask you one more question because I'm completely zoned in, especially on the types, the three C's, right? So if a business owner listening today finds that they are a hybrid of a couple of those, is there ever a time they should lean into being a curator more than a connector? How does that work, especially with we now know people still prefer using a real estate agent, right? So we don't want to be intimidated by what's happening with the pivot, but how do we know which parts of us should show up to be most effective as a marketer, especially in a really kind of shaky season?
Yeah, great questions, Akia. And you're such a fantastic host, by the way. Your questions are so on point and hopefully helpful to the audience.
Thank
So the
you.
good news is that you can't go wrong with any combination, okay? As long as it's providing value to your audience, at the end of the day, that is literally all that matters. Because sometimes there's questions of like, well, what if I have someone else post for me, blah, blah. Like none of that matters. What
Hmm.
matters is your audience is getting value, okay? So at the end of the day, that gives you a lot of flexibility. Now, some creative questions to ask yourself might be about scale. So, well, if let's say you're a curator and you're really good at curating, but you're doing it at like a macro level, right? So maybe let's say you, and again, making this up, maybe you have a podcast and that's sort of your macro, or you have a LinkedIn Q&A. At the end of that with your guests, is there someone specific you could introduce your guest to, or would like to or something your guest needs where you can take it to the micro, right? You can build that relationship more one-on-one. Or let's say you're a great connector and you're like, wow, I am like, I'm a great connector. And one of my good friends, Dory Clark, is a great connector. Like that's her jam. Like she's a creator too, but she's just a really good connector because she happens to know so many people from different circles, business and arts. And so she's constantly mixing and
Mm.
cross-pollinating. The thing about Dory is, even though what's going on, she used to do these amazing author dinners where she would invite fellow authors and help them connect with each. So she was the ultimate connector and curator. Now she's taken that and she does these sessions on Zoom where it's about, 6 to 9
Ah.
people, different folks that she's introducing to each other. So you have to think about wherever you are, creator, curator, or connector, think about how you can scale it either in the macro or you can scale it down to be more effective for what you're trying to do.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. And I know there's even so much more in your book, Momentum. And so, guys, please, please, she's so gracious, and everyone gets a book. You get a book. You get a book. So go to counselforinclusion.org/finserve-now. Shima, thank you so much for boiling down the C's. Excuse me, I'm kind of talking all over myself here, because I think that when you know yourself, when you know your brand at the very core, you can then pivot and bring in the audience and be a lot more relatable. And you really just walked us through what that looks like and even how to do it, even though we are not drilling down on tactics until the 27th. So thank you so much for that. And before we see you literally on the 27th
Yeah.
to do part two with tactics. Will you just share a little bit about how our audience can stay abreast of what you have going on? How can we support, follow, all this good stuff? The Shama Hyder.
Well, I'm more than happy to connect with any of you guys. Feel free to connect with me. My favorite platform these days is LinkedIn. Hint, hint, something for us to talk about on the 27th. So hope
Oh
you guys
yeah.
tune in. But yeah, send me a LinkedIn connection, Instagram, Twitter. I mean, choose your poison really. But if you connect with me, just put FinServe in there so I know who you are, and I will be sure to accept that connection. So yeah, I'm really, and if you want more resources, by the way, on marketing, zenmedia.com, we have a ton of white papers and content. I mean, for me, I fall in that creator bucket. So I'm constantly
Nice.
creating content. So definitely check that out. And, hopefully it will really be helpful to you guys with where you are right now and everything that's happening.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, Shema, we are so grateful. Thank you so much. And we'll see you on the 27th at 1 p.m. Central. Oh my
Sounds
gosh,
good.
this is so
See you
good. So, guys,
then.
remember, thank you. Yes, remember as we wrap here, get her book. It's free for you, Momentum. Go on the website, fill out the form, and remember, FinServe Now is the third Tuesday of every month, but we have a special edition talking technology and tactics for you. Councilforinclusion.org/FinServe-Now. I'm Zakia Larry. We just hung out with Shema Hyder, and we will see you again on the 27th. Make it a great day, guys.